Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Mike Jackwitz. I'm the director of the Coconino County Criminal Justice Coordinating Council. I'd like to welcome you all to the next training in our behavioral health and criminal justice cross training series. So we're lucky today to have with us Ms. Sydney Charnello. She's a Coconino County Mental Health Court Coordinator and Clinical Liaison who will be speaking about specialty courts. So the chat is enabled. If you have any questions, please enter them in the chat. If you have any issues hearing Sydney or myself, please enter that in the chat as well. And without further ado, here's Ms. Charnello.
Thank you, Mike. I appreciate it. I'll just ask everybody in the chat to go ahead and throw in there that they can hear okay, that the audio is working, and we'll get started. All right. So my name is Sydney Charnello. I work for Coconino County Superior Court, and I am the Mental Health Court Coordinator and Clinical Liaison. So today we're going to specifically be focusing on specialty courts. So I will go through specialty courts, some history behind specialty courts, and go a little bit more into depth about the specialty courts that we have available here in Coconino County. And I'll talk a little bit about my role as well as a coordinator for that specialty court. And then if anyone has any questions at the end, you can feel free to place the questions in the chat and we'll answer any questions to the best of our ability. So what I'm going to start with today is just a tad bit of history about specialty courts. So specialty courts have been around for a long time. They are more so known as treatment courts. And oftentimes those terms are interchangeable. Having slight technical difficulties really quick. There we go. I'm telling you guys, the clicker never works in the beginning. It really, I don't know what it is about it, but it never works out in the beginning. So excuse us for the technical difficulties. So specialty courts, what are specialty courts? Often we use the term specialty courts and treatment courts interchangeably. So often specialty courts are more commonly referred to as treatment courts, and they are considered to be the most successful justice intervention for people that have substance use disorder and mental health disorders. They've been around for at least 3 decades, and they really prove that a combination of treatment and compassion can lead people that are struggling with substance use and mental health disorders to live a more stable, healthy life. I believe the first specialty court was started around in the 80s in Miami. So they've been around for a long time. And this is essentially a public health approach to justice reform where treatment providers are ensuring individuals before the courts received evidence-based treatment, that they work as a team with law enforcement and community supervision, prosecution, defense, and the judge all provide ongoing support. So it's a very multi-team approach to help individuals who struggle with substance use disorder, mental health disorders, or co-occurring substance use and mental health disorders. So All Rise, or formerly known as the National Association of Drug Court Professionals, is the leading national organization on treatment courts. So they used to be called NADCP. They recently just rebranded to All Rise. So a lot of the information out there about specialty courts can be found through All Rise. They're the leading organization in research and training when it comes to treatment courts. So just a little bit of statistics. There are currently over 4,000 treatment courts in operation here in the United States. There are over 150,000 individuals who have been served by treatment courts each year. They show about a 58% reduction in crime and 6,000 tax dollars saved per participants. So when we look at treatment courts as a whole, the kind of old school model and the tried and true model of a treatment courts are the adult drug courts. So adult drug courts have been around for a long time. They have been around the longest. Treatment courts really started as adult drug courts. So like we kind of spoke about, they're an alternative to incarceration that combine public health and public safety approaches to connect people who are justice involved to individualized and evidence-based treatment. Adult drug courts are definitely the most carefully studied and well-proven intervention in our nation's history for people with substance use disorders. And extensive research shows that our adult drug courts are the most successful with populations at a high risk for committing new crimes or otherwise being unsuccessful in regular probation, people who have a high need for treatment and other recovery services. So really, the crux with adult drug courts is they're the most beneficial when they are serving a high risk and high need population. So as time goes on, things start to adapt and things start to change, and we start to see new forms of treatment courts. So we can see the development of DUI or DWI courts. So courts that focus on individuals who have repetitive DUIs. We see mental health courts, or oftentimes called co-occurring courts, start to come into play. We see family treatment courts as well. There are juvenile treatment courts. We also have tribal healing to wellness courts that focus on our indigenous populations, and veterans treatment courts as well. So as time went on and drug courts started to develop and become nationwide programs, we started to see these other courts pop up and use the same sort of base model for these types of treatment courts. So what I really want to focus on today in this webinar is what we have locally here in our community. So I'm going to go through a couple of the local treatment courts that we have here available in our community. And I'm going to focus the most probably on our recovery court and our mental health court. But I want to go through all the treatment courts that we have available in our community. So obviously, I'm sure a lot of people have heard of our recovery court, which used to be called DUI drug court. It's been around the longest. We have 3 mental health courts in Coconino County. We have a mental health court out of Superior Court. We have a mental health court out of Justice Court. And we have a mental health court out of Municipal Court. And I'll go through a little bit the difference between those 3 courts. And we also have a Veterans Court here out of our Superior Court. And I completely spaced putting on here as well. We do have a family treatment court as well here in Coconino County. That is completely my fault for leaving that out. It is relatively new and it takes place over at the juvenile court. So it's a family treatment court that works with families who are going through dependencies, and works on reunification with families and their children. So that's a very, very new program that we have here in Coconino County, but it is available for adults through the juvenile court. So recovery court is, like I said, our longest running treatment court in Coconino County. It is a post-adjudication probation supervised program. So what that means is recovery court is designed for individuals who are entering a plea agreement. They're entering a plea agreement of guilty, and they're being sentenced to supervised probation. And while they're on supervised probation, they're going to be participating in the recovery court. So that's what post-adjudication means. It means they've pled guilty to charges and they are sentenced and convicted and placed on supervised probation. And they are able to then participate in the recovery court program. Now, this program, again, is the longest running program in Coconino County. It used to be referred to as DUI drug court. And recently, they've changed it to recovery court to have a more inclusive and just a better fitting name. So recovery court is a lot more open versus something like DUI drug court. This program serves a high risk and high need population. So like we talked about earlier, it's all the research out there that has been done about treatment courts and adult drug courts, all the research that All Rise does, all the research that the Bureau of Justice Administration and all these other federal organizations do, all of them show that these models of treatment courts are best, are most successful when they serve a high risk, high need population. So what that means is someone who's high risk is high risk to commit a new crime, and someone who's high need is someone who is in high need of services. So our recovery court program is going to focus on serving high risk individuals who are at risk for committing new crimes and are in high need of services. And their main focus is people with substance use disorders. Their recovery court, they're going to focus on individuals with substance use disorder. So mental health court, which is our superior court mental health court, is the newest program in Coconino County. It's the newest program out of Superior Court in Coconino County, run out of the Superior Court, and it is very similar. It's going to have a very similar background to recovery court. So again, it's a post-adjudication probation supervised program. So just again, what that means is individuals have been charged with a crime. They are pleading guilty and being sentenced to supervised probation. And while they're on supervised probation, they're going to participate in mental health court. Again, mental health court serves a high risk, high need population. So our target population are individuals who are at high risk of committing new crimes and in high need of services. Our services being substance abuse services, mental health services. The caveat and the difference between recovery court and mental health court is mental health court is going to serve individuals who are seriously mentally ill or SMI, and they may have a co-occurring substance use disorder. So they don't have to have a co-occurring substance use disorder, but we see that oftentimes when we're serving high risk and high need individuals, it is very likely that along with their serious mental illness, they do have a co-occurring substance use disorder. So that's going to be the main difference between recovery court and our superior court mental health court. So I want to talk a little bit about eligibility, because that's generally where a lot of the questions come in is, well, who can participate in these programs? Who is eligible for these programs? So again, I'm going to spend a lot of time talking about recovery court and superior court mental health court. Before I dive into the eligibility, I want to make a quick note on the mental health courts out of justice court and city court. So our justice court mental health court program is out of our justice court, Flagstaff Justice Court here in Coconino County. And it is a deferred prosecution program. So that means that individuals defer their entering of a guilty plea, and they participate in the program. And then at the end of the program, if they are successful, then their case is going to be dismissed. So it's a little bit of a different structure. There's no probation supervision involved because they're not pleading guilty to anything. Their plea of guilt is deferred. And that is exactly the structure that the city court mental health court or municipal court mental health court follows as well. They follow a deferred prosecution model where individuals defer their guilty plea. They participate in a program, they get connected to services, And if they complete everything they're supposed to complete, their case gets dismissed. So I don't have in-depth information about how those programs function while people are in the program. But I know that the main goals of those programs are to connect people to services in town and make sure they are participating in treatment and taking their medications. The contact for, if you're curious or have any questions about somebody you may know that might be eligible for either of those programs, for justice court, you're going to want to contact the county attorney's office to ask any more specific questions about eligibility for their mental health court. And for the municipal court or the city court mental health court, you're going to want to contact the city prosecutor's office to inquire about maybe somebody who you think might be eligible, or if you have any further questions about those two programs. So just a little bit back to, excuse me, eligibility. So I want to talk a little bit about recovery court and mental health court out of Superior Court. So for both of these programs, there's a lot of similarities again. So the first and foremost is you have to be charged with a felony in Coconino County. So we would also consider both recovery court and mental health court as post-charging programs. So what that means is people who are eligible for these programs have been charged with a crime. They've not just been arrested, they've been charged with a crime. So there's been a formal complaint or an indictment against this individual. And it's generally felony charges within Coconino County. So in order to be eligible for recovery court, you have to be charged with a felony in Coconino County, as well as mental health court. You have to be charged with a felony in Coconino County. So I get a lot of people that often will ask about, they'll tell me that, hey, this person I know who I think might be eligible for your program, they got arrested last night. Something along those lines. And unfortunately, there's not much that we can do to get them into our program until they've been actually charged with a crime. And it's very often that in Coconino County, people do not get charged with things they get arrested for right away. So there might be a lag of time between when somebody's arrested and when somebody's charged. So the people that are coming into these programs are people who have already been charged with a crime. Now, to be eligible for both of these programs, you have to be high risk and high need. So again, we spoke earlier about what that means, about what high risk and what high need means. So both recovery court and mental health court use a validated risk assessment in order to determine if somebody is high risk or high need. So we have to be able to figure out, well, how do we know who's high risk and who's high need? So both recovery court and mental health court utilize a validated risk assessment to determine who is high risk and who is high need. And for recovery court, you have to have a substance use disorder. Their focus is on substance use disorder, and you have to show on a substance use assessment that you have a substance use disorder. And also for recovery court, you have to live in Flagstaff or within 35 miles of Flagstaff. And again, so here's some of those differences, right? So we're looking at recovery court where, okay, you have to be charged with a felony in Coconino County. You have to be high risk, high need, but you have to have a substance use disorder as well. And you have to live in Flagstaff or within 35 miles. Where you see some of the differences with mental health court is you have to have a seriously mentally ill designation or an SMI designation, or be diagnosed with or have a qualifying diagnosis. So a lot of times you might hear people ask, or I might have people ask me, does somebody have to be SMI to participate in your program? Well, the answer is no. And the reason that we did that was because there are a large group of people who have a qualifying diagnosis that will be denied an SMI designation because of their substance use, and they won't be able to get that designation. So we decided to open it up, and as long as when people are being referred to our program, as long as the attorneys can show that they have a qualifying diagnosis, which the qualifying diagnoses are identified. Once they can show that their client has one of those diagnoses, they can become eligible for the program. And if they're not SMI and they have a qualifying diagnosis and they come into our program, we can always work with them towards getting their SMI designation. And we have done that with people in the past. We prefer the clients to already have the designation, because this gives them some alternative coverage with their insurance. But we are not going to necessarily exclude individuals who are not SMI. We just have to have documentation of the mental illness of the qualifying diagnosis. And again, too, a lot of times when we're looking at high risk, high need individuals, they're going to have a co-occurring substance use disorder. So they don't have to have a co-occurring substance use disorder to participate in our program, but they might have one, and that's okay. So they may have a co-occurring substance use disorder. And just like with recovery court, they have to live in Flagstaff or within 35 miles of Flagstaff. Unfortunately, right now, because of the landscape of our county, our services are very centralized to Flagstaff, and we need our individuals to be able to participate regularly and have reliable ways to participate in treatment, reliable ways of transportation. So we do have a restriction on how far they can live from Flagstaff. So again, I know that there's a lot of questions that come up with eligibility, and I'm happy to answer any questions about eligibility, but these are the very basic lists of things that you need for a client to be eligible for recovery court or to be eligible for our superior court mental health court. So I want to talk a little bit about the structure of the program. So people sometimes are curious about, what does the program look like? Both recovery court and mental health court have handbooks where it lays out the structure of their program, the structure of phases, and all the rules and regulations that participants must abide by. So both recovery court and mental health court follow the All Rise treatment court standards. So one thing that All Rise does, or All Rise formerly known as an ADCP, they have treatment court standards. They have national treatment court standards that outline how a program is supposed to function and what standards a program should be following to meet best practices. So both recovery court and mental health court follow those All Rise treatment court standards. So that includes a phase structure where participants start in phase 1 and move through the phases based on their completion. Part of those standards as well is drug testing. Participants will engage in drug testing. Part of those standards are having a multidisciplinary team, which means a large team of people from all different disciplines. And the actual physical structure, just going back a little bit to the phases, is there's 5 phases in each program. So recovery court and mental health court each has 5 phases. And ideally these programs should be lasting from 1 to 1.5 years. So physically, when you look at the structure of the program, they're going to be based on these phases. And each program has a handbook that lays out in each phase what a participant is supposed to do, what they're supposed to achieve, and what they have supposed to accomplish in order to move from phase to phase. So how do we actually handle participants in these programs, right? What do we do when we're working with high risk, high need individuals? How do we help them work towards long-term, health and recovery? So the way that we're going to mainly do that is through incentives, sanctions, and therapeutic adjustments. So any treatment court that is following the national treatment court standards should have incentives, sanctions, and therapeutic adjustments that are applied based on the participant's behavior. Now, there's been a lot of research as of late about incentives. And what we know now is that incentives should outweigh sanctions 10-1. So there should be much more incentives than there are sanctions. And now when we talk about therapeutic adjustments, that's where sometimes things can get blurry or tricky. So therapeutic adjustments come from treatment recommendations, and they should never be used as punishment. So let's give an example. Somebody tests positive on a drug test, and say they test positive for methamphetamine. Now, they might need to make adjustments to their treatment plan, but that cannot be presented to the participant as the punishment. The punishment is for the positive UA. And so some other sort of sanction may have to be employed for having a positive UA. But if you're going to make adjustments to that person's treatment because they've relapsed, that needs to be presented as a therapeutic adjustment and not a sanction. What we don't want is we don't want to correlate adjustments in treatment to punishment. So sanctions should be used sparingly, essentially. So some examples of incentives can be anything from verbal praise and acknowledgement to gift cards, candy, prizes, naming people as all-stars, having fishbowl drawings and moving them from phase to phase. Little things like verbal praise go a long way. Applause, standing ovation, all the way up to moving people to different phases are all examples of incentives you could give somebody for positive behavior. Sanctions are going to be things like thinking reports. You could stay in a phase longer or go back a phase. You might be called last on the calendar. You might be sent to view revocation court. You might be given community service hours, and very sparingly, you may be given jail time as a sanction. And therapeutic adjustments essentially look like addition or subtraction of treatment options such as IOP to residential treatment, or having somebody participate in a cognitive-based type treatment such as MRT. So earlier I mentioned the multidisciplinary team. Now, that essentially means that you have a team full of individuals who all come from different disciplines that are working towards the same goal for your participants. And the basis of any good multidisciplinary team is collaboration. So treatment courts cannot function without collaboration from all partners. So this looks like county attorney, the judge, the county attorney, a defense attorney, treatment providers, probation officers, peer supports, coordinators, therapists, clinicians. This is all of those individuals who have a very different role coming together to help the participant towards one common goal. So this collaboration must be non-adversarial. This is probably the most difficult thing for individuals in these teams to grasp. Is you have prosecutors, someone like prosecutors and defense attorneys, trying to work with probation and treatment providers and peer supports, and you're trying to be non-adversarial when normally those roles are adversarial. Sometimes in normal structures of court, a prosecutor and defense attorney are adversarial. They are essentially fighting against each other. Well, in a treatment court, they cannot be adversarial. They must work together, or the functioning of the team will fail. So effective collaboration always increases positive outcomes. It creates a cohesive, supportive team for participants and allows them to feel they have a large safety net. And it closes the gaps in services. When we can all function as a team together and we can all work towards the same goal, we can close a lot of those gaps in services for our participants. And then the ultimate goal for our participants, right, along with achieving mental well-being and recovery, is to graduate. We want our participants to work towards graduation. So once participants are completing all phases, they become eligible for graduation. And oftentimes kind of the carrot at the end of the stick here is they see their cases being dismissed or having felonies reduced to misdemeanors. And we treat this like school graduation, right? We have a large ceremony held to acknowledge participants. And we have all kinds of community partners come, and they're encouraged and welcome to attend so we can highlight this person's successes through a program like this. So that is the main overview of specialty courts and how the specialty courts function here in Coconino County. And if anybody has any questions that they don't have now or they might have later, I have my contact information up there. My main role with all this is I'm the point of contact for the program. So if anyone ever has any questions, they can contact me. And I screen all incoming clients. So I receive all referrals and I screen all incoming clients. I complete risk assessments and do interviews with the clients to determine their eligibility. So if anybody ever has questions about somebody that they think might be eligible, please feel free to email me, to call me, and I will be more than happy to answer your questions. So if there are any questions now, I'll go ahead and answer that.
So we have one question that came through from Sarah Metz. Do you know who the coordinator is for family court?
Yes, so I do know who the coordinator of family court is, Sarah, and I can email you her information. Her name is Sandra. And I will email out, I can email out her information. I have her business card sitting on my desk. I do not have her number or email off the top of my head, but I do have her information and I can email it out to you.
Following the upcoming days, we'll be sending out an email with a link to this presentation, so we'll make sure that contact information is in that email.
Yes.
I don't see any other questions come through. I did have a question. So you mentioned that to qualify for recovery court or mental health court, an individual needs to live within 35 miles of
Yes.
Flagstaff. Are there currently any plans to expand that or to provide options for individuals who live outside that area?
So one thing that I did also forget to mention is there is a recovery court or drug court in Page. Page has a drug court, so they take clients. I don't know how what the mile radius is out from Page. So they have a recovery court for some folks up in that area as well. But as of now, until we can build better transportation options, we probably don't have any plans to expand that as of now. Unfortunately, we do I will say in mental health court, we have accepted folks into the program that are outside of that 35 miles because they had reliable transportation. They were able to prove that they had reliable transportation, and that is unfortunately few and far between. But until we get maybe some better forms of transportation or better ways to expand services to folks in more rural areas, that mile radius probably won't change anytime soon.
Thanks, Cindy.
Yeah.
And Ethelina Yazzie wrote in the comments within the Page city limits.
Yeah. So up there on Page, they've got their drug court as well, which functions very similarly to the recovery court here. And the county attorney's office and the probation office in Page would be the main contact for that program as well.
Thank you.
Cool.
Does anyone else have any questions for Sydney? Okay, I want to thank you all for your time and your participation, for Sydney for giving this presentation. Looks like we're going to give you all a big chunk of your afternoons back. In the upcoming days, you'll receive an email with recording for this presentation, as well as the contact for the family court coordinator. So thank you all, and please remember to register for upcoming trainings as well. I'll be sending a flyer with that email, which will outline all the trainings we have coming up. We're over halfway through by now. So thank you all very much. Have a great day.